Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why the oldest living things on this planet are all submerged? We toil on land, fighting blight, fungus, and rot, constantly propping up our fragile crops with a cocktail of synthetic life support. Yet in the depths of the ocean, a bowhead whale glides through 2 centuries of existence without a single tumor. A simple sea sponge exists for thousands of years, immune to the decay that plagues our soil. There is no pharmacist in the reef. There is no industrial chemical plant in the deep. So what is the secret variable? It is the medium itself. They are bathing in the blood of the earth. For a brief moment in history, we cracked this code. In the shadow of the Great Depression, a brilliant mind unlocked the biological reality that seawater is not merely salty water, but a complete electrically charged matrix of 92 essential elements, the exact same blueprint required for every living cell to function at its peak. He grew timber that defied fire and vegetables that cured the incurable. But then the silence fell. The research was buried, the books pulled from the shelves, and the narrative shifted. You were taught to fear the salt, to view the ocean as a desert of death for agriculture. Why? Because you cannot patent the Pacific. You cannot put a barcode on the tides. They replaced a free infinite resource with a 3-digit chemical subscription, NPK, and in doing so, they severed the link between your food and the primordial soup that spawned it. Today, we reconnect that circuit. To understand why your garden is likely starving despite your bags of fertilizer, we must look back to a man who the industrial complex has tried very hard to erase. You will not find Dr. Maynard Murray in your modern agricultural textbooks. He was not a farmer, he was a medical doctor and a physiologist with a background in ENT, educated at the University of Cincinnati. This distinction is critical because he did not look at plants as commodities. He looked at them as delivery systems for cellular nutrition. In 1938, while the world was holding its breath for war, Murray was obsessed with a different kind of conflict, the biological breakdown of terrestrial life. He realized that while freshwater species and land animals developed tumors and degenerative diseases, ocean dwellers were virtually immune. He asked the question that modern agronomy ignores. What is the fundamental difference in their environment? The answer lay in the chemistry of the medium. Murray discovered that seawater contains a steady, balanced solution of all 92 natural elements found in the periodic table. Compare that to the bag of fertilizer sitting in your shed right now. Turn it over and look at the label. It likely boasts 3 numbers, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Perhaps if you paid extra, they threw in a handful of micros like iron or magnesium. But 3 elements against 92. That is not nutrition. That is a starvation diet masquerading as food. We have been trying to build complex biological structures with only 3 bricks, while nature requires the entire quarry. Murray proved this hypothesis with a series of experiments that should have revolutionized farming. He didn't just pour water. He utilized complete sea solids, the dehydrated crystal matrix of the ocean, and applied them to soil. The results were not merely statistical, they were visually violent in their contrast. In one trial involving peach trees infected with the incurable curly leaf virus, the trees treated with sea solids didn't just survive, they shed the virus entirely and produced a record harvest. In another involving turnips, the ocean-fed vegetables were not only larger, but contained a density of minerals that made the control group look like hollow shells. He wasn't growing organic, he was growing oceanic, effectively restoring the chemical bridge between the land and the sea that erosion and over-farming had destroyed. He had found the fountain of youth for the soil, yet instead of a Nobel Prize, he received silence. The industry saw a threat. If a farmer could revitalize his land with a simple extraction from the sea, who would buy the patent-protected chemical cocktails? To comprehend the magnitude of the theft, we must look at the ground beneath our feet not as a solid foundation, but as a crime scene. For the last century, modern industrial agriculture has essentially strip-mined the topsoil. We treat the land like a bottomless ATM, withdrawing dense nutrients, harvest after harvest, but making deposits of only three cheap currencies: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. This is the great agricultural lie. It is a biological Ponzi scheme. When it rains, gravity pulls water-soluble minerals out of the soil and carries them into the river systems, which eventually dump them into the ocean. The land is constantly bleeding nutrition into the sea. The ocean is the final repository of the Earth's fertility, becoming richer every millennium, while our farmland becomes a graveyard of dust. This has led to a phenomenon scientists quietly refer to as hidden hunger. You walk into a supermarket and see a red, shiny tomato. It looks like a tomato. It feels like a tomato. But chemically, it is a ghost. It is a hollow shell pumped up with water and nitrates, lacking the trace minerals, selenium, iodine, vanadium, that your endocrine system desperately needs to function. A bowl of spinach today contains a fraction of the iron it held in 1950. You are eating more, yet you are biologically starving. The plants are weak because their immune systems are comprised of these missing enzymes and cofactors. Without them, the plant has no natural defense. So, what does the industry do? They sell you the poison to protect the weak plant. They spray pesticides and fungicides to compensate for the lack of mineral density. They broke the soil's legs and are now charging you for the crutches. We have engineered a food system that prioritizes volume over vitality. And the result is a population that is overfed and undernourished, surviving on the wax fruit of a depleted earth. We need to strip away the mysticism and look at the physics. This is not magic, this is mechanics. When the establishment hears seawater, they scream salt. But when a physicist looks at seawater, they see a complete electrolyte solution. This distinction is the difference between life and death. You must understand that a plant root does not have teeth. It cannot eat a rock. It cannot absorb a mineral unless that mineral is dissolved and carries an electrical charge, an ion. Most soil amendments are dead, inert piles of dust that require massive biological energy and microbial labor to break down before the plant can even taste them. Seawater is different. It is already broken down. It is pre-digested. The science here touches on a concept that biology classes often skip: the internal ocean. Decades before Murray, the French biologist René Quinton proved that the mineral composition of human blood plasma and seawater is nearly identical. We are essentially walking bags of marine fluid. Plants operate on this same fundamental logic. When you apply diluted seawater, you are not just adding nutrients, you are restoring the primal electrical conductivity of the soil. You are creating a matrix of ions, gold, silver, zinc, cobalt, that float in a perfect suspension. Because these minerals are in a liquid ionic state, they bypass the plant's heavy lifting. Usually, a plant has to expend valuable sugar, energy created through photosynthesis, to coax nutrients out of the soil. It's an expensive exchange. But with seawater, the pressure is balanced. The nutrition flows in through the root hairs via passive osmosis and active transport with minimal energy expenditure. The plant doesn't have to work for its meal. It just eats. This surplus energy, which would normally be wasted on fighting for scraps in depleted soil, is now redirected immediately into growth, defense, and fruit production. You are essentially plugging the plant directly into the wall socket of nature. This is where the programming kicks in. The moment you mention seawater to a conventional agronomist, they will likely recoil and shout one word: salinity. You have been conditioned to believe that salt is the ultimate herbicide, the destroyer of worlds. And in the context of industrial chemistry, they are partially correct, but for the wrong reason. You must distinguish between the white, bleached crystals in your kitchen shaker and the complex saline matrix of the ocean. They are not the same substance. Table salt is sodium chloride that has been chemically stripped, bleached, and isolated. It is a lonely, aggressive chemical. Nature abhors isolation. In the ocean, sodium never travels alone. It is always buffered, surrounded by magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sulfates. This is the antidote effect. The magnesium and calcium in seawater act as a biological buffer that prevents sodium toxicity. When you strip these buffers away, as modern refining does, you create a poison. When you keep them together, as nature intended, you create a balanced electrolyte. The establishment leverages the fear of saline soils to sell you gypsum and leaching agents, but they fail to mention the most basic hydrological cycle, rain. Unless you are farming in a sealed pot with zero drainage, the accumulation of sodium is a myth for the backyard gardener using this method. Sodium is highly soluble. What the plant does not use, the rain washes away, leaving behind the heavier, stickier trace minerals that attach to the soil colloids. You are not salting the earth like a conquering Roman army. You are mineralizing it. Furthermore, we must dismantle the lie that plants hate sodium. This is false. Sodium is a functional nutrient. Crops like celery, spinach, and beets adore it. Even C4 grains like corn utilize sodium to aid in the metabolism of carbon dioxide. The industry has demonized an essential element because they cannot control its distribution. If you realize that the ocean is a perfectly balanced, buffered mineral delivery system that self-regulates in healthy soil, the fear evaporates. And when the fear evaporates, so does their profit margin on soil conditioners. We are not dumping bags of rock salt on the roots. We are administering a diluted trace element serum. The dose makes the poison, and the context makes the cure. Now we move from the library to the laboratory. This is the operational blueprint, the precise protocol for manufacturing the serum that your soil is craving. Do not deviate from these instructions, for while the ocean is life, the dosage is the discipline. First, you must secure the source. Do not walk to a stagnant harbor or a drainage ditch where the city vomits its runoff. You want the raw, wild pulse of the ocean. Find a rocky coastline or a beach with high wave action where the water is oxygenated and constantly cycling. Collect your sample in a clear vessel. When you bring it home, you are not ready to pour. You must let it rest. Place the container in a cool, dark place for 24 hours. This is the settling phase. You are allowing the heavy sediments, sand, and accidental microplastics to sink to the bottom, while the lighter organic debris floats to the top. What you want is the crystal-clear middle layer, the pure mineral plasma. Siphon this off carefully. Now we approach the golden ratio. The mistake of the amateur is greed. They think if a little is good, a lot is better. This is how you kill a garden. You are not trying to pickle your plants, you are trying to signal them. The universal starting ratio for a soil drench is 1:30. 1 part seawater to 30 parts fresh, dechlorinated water. To visualize this, imagine taking a single coffee cup of ocean water and mixing it into a standard 2-gallon watering can. This dilution creates a solution that mimics the mineral concentration of ideal, virgin soil. It is strong enough to trigger the electrical response in the root zone, but dilute enough to ensure the sodium buffering capacity of your soil is not overwhelmed. For younger, more tender seedlings, push that ratio to 1:50 or even 1:100. You are acting as a homeopath for the earth, not a chemical dumper. You have your serum. Now how do you administer it? There are 2 distinct injection vectors, and understanding the difference is what separates a novice from a master cultivator. The first is the direct line, foliar feeding. This is the agricultural equivalent of an intravenous drip. By spraying a highly diluted mist, stick to the 1:100 ratio here, directly onto the leaves, you bypass the soil entirely. But timing is the dictator of success. Do not spray in the heat of the high noon sun. At that hour, the plant is in survival mode. Its stomata, the microscopic breathing pores on the leaf surface, are tightly shut to prevent moisture loss. If you spray then, the liquid simply sits on the surface and evaporates, leaving behind mineral salts that can burn the tissue. You must strike when the gates are open. The golden window is early morning as the dew lifts, or late evening as the air cools. In these moments, the stomata are wide and receptive, drinking in the mineral mist and translocating it immediately to the sap. The second vector is the soil drench, and this is where you play the long game. You are not just feeding the plant, you are waking the dead. The soil microbiome, that vast invisible city of bacteria and fungi beneath your feet, is likely dormant because it is starving for trace elements just as much as your crops are. Nitrogen fixes bacteria, for instance, require molybdenum to function. No molybdenum, no free nitrogen. When you pour your 1 to 30 seawater solution into the root zone, you are essentially ringing the dinner bell for these microorganisms. You are providing the cofactors they need to synthesize enzymes. The result is a microbial population explosion. These microbes then break down organic matter faster, cycle nutrients more efficiently, and create a symbiotic shield around the root hairs. You are not forcing growth. You are rebuilding the biological engine that creates growth. We are not dealing in anecdotes here. We are dealing in hard, irrefutable data that exposes the fragility of the conventional model. When Dr. Murray took his hypothesis to the field, the results were not just statistically significant, they were biologically absolute. In one critical trial, he planted 2 beds of tomatoes side by side. One was treated with standard NPK fertilizer, the other with sea solids. He then deliberately inoculated both beds with the lethal tobacco mosaic virus. The standard crop was decimated, rotting on the vine. The sea-fed crop? It didn't just survive, it ignored the virus entirely. This proved that a plant fully supplied with trace elements builds an immune system so robust that it renders incurable diseases irrelevant. The same phenomenon occurred with corn. While neighboring fields were ravaged by corn smut and fungal rot, the mineralized fields stood pristine. The fungus could not take hold because the cellular integrity of the plant was impenetrable. But you do not need a laboratory to see this. You need a refractometer. This simple handheld device measures the refraction of light through sap, giving you a Brix score, a direct reading of the dissolved solids, sugars, and minerals in the plant's blood. Modern supermarket produce typically scores a pathetic 4 or 5 on the Brix scale. It is barely alive. Crops grown with sea energy consistently score in the high teens or 20s. This number is your scorecard. It tells you that the plant is efficient, dense, and packed with energy. And here is the mechanism the pesticide companies hate. High Brix implies high insect resistance. Insects are not predators, they are nature's garbage collectors. They do not have the digestive enzymes to process complex high-energy sugars. They are programmed to attack the weak, the sick, and the mineral deficient. When you raise your Brix, you are effectively making your garden invisible to pests. They fly right past your vibrant kale to feast on your neighbor's nitrogen-bloated weeds. Finally, there is the taste. That explosion of flavor you experience in a true heirloom tomato is not magic. It is the taste of minerals. When you bite into food grown this way, your body recognizes it immediately, not just as calories, but as medicine. This brings us to the most uncomfortable question of this entire investigation. If the evidence is so compelling, if the biology is sound, and if the results are undeniable, why is this method not the standard? Why isn't every agricultural college teaching the Murray method? The answer is not scientific, it is purely economic. You cannot patent the ocean. There is no corporation on earth that can claim intellectual property rights over the Atlantic. The sea belongs to no one, and therefore it offers no profit margin to the giants who control the food supply. Consider the business model of modern agriculture. It relies on a foundation of dependency. They sell you a seed that is often genetically designed to be responsive only to their specific inputs. They sell you the fertilizer to make it grow, which inadvertently weakens the soil by stripping out trace elements. Then, when the pests inevitably attack your weakened, sugar-deficient crop, they sell you the pesticide. It is a perfect closed loop of recurring revenue. Every problem they create has a price tag attached to the solution. A farmer who uses seawater breaks this chain. They stop buying the synthetic NPK. They stop buying the fungicide because their plants are immune. They stop needing the rescue chemistry. This method represents a terrifying variable to the boardroom logic of the agrochemical complex. It is a disruptive technology that is older than technology itself. If a farmer can drive a truck to the coast and pump 1,000 gallons of the world's best fertilizer for the cost of diesel fuel, the stock prices of the fertilizer conglomerates would collapse. The silence surrounding Dr. Murray's work was not an accident. It was a form of economic censorship. They did not burn his books. They simply made sure they were never reprinted. They labeled the practice primitive and saline risky to protect a market worth billions. The greatest threat to their monopoly is not a new competitor. It is a liberated farmer who realizes that the most advanced technology on the planet is free, liquid, and covers 70% of the globe. So here we stand, at the edge of the water, looking out at the same horizon that Dr. Maynard Murray studied nearly a century ago. The file is open. The evidence is laid bare. You now possess a piece of knowledge that has been systematically marginalized, not because it is false, but because it is dangerous to the status quo. It is dangerous because it breeds independence. The garden is no longer just a hobby. It is a proving ground. Every time you bypass the garden center aisle and head to the shoreline, you are committing a small act of rebellion. You are stepping out of the consumer cycle and into the role of a modern alchemist, transmuting the raw, chaotic power of the ocean into the serene order of a living, breathing harvest. You are not just growing plants, you are restoring the lost conductivity of the world, 1 square foot of soil at a time. The choice is now yours, and it is absolute. You can continue to treat your soil like a chemistry set, dependent on the drip feed of a system that profits from your depletion. You can continue to eat the hollow ghosts of vegetables that look perfect but offer nothing. Or you can walk down to the water's edge, fill a cup with the ancient salty blood of this earth, and remember how to grow food that actually feeds. The ocean has been waiting for you for 4 billion years. Are you finally ready to accept its gift?